3, 2, 1.
Today, I want to invoke a holy, holy uprising. We stand poised with the ability to use this teaching and all the other tools that we bring in, that I bring in every week beyond this teaching, although they're all a part of this teaching, even if not directly so. But we stand poised with the ability to use all of that to take ourselves and all of humanity, actually, into a new paradigm of consciousness. A new decluttered paradigm, bringing forth into our lives all that we deserve, which is all that we have the consciousness of. It's a paradigm of prosperity, of happiness, of health, of loving relationships. It's a model of miracles, aha moments, and infinite possibilities. It's a pattern of connection and communion and joy. It's a habit of right thinking and truth. It's a mirror of opulence and opportunities, the reflection of which happens in our lives and our experiences. We're invited every single day to demonstrate all of this and more in our lives, in this center, in our communities, in the world. And to do so, we must rise up. We must rise up in this holy, holy life. Like we rise up for social justice. Just like we rise up for social justice, we must rise up to a consciousness of equality and unity, oneness revealing the divinity within. Like we rise up to save our family and friends through dangerous conditions or conditions that don't fit us the best, we must rise up to the consciousness of protection, security, and peace in our world, in our lives. Like we rise up to move away from an addiction or depression, we must rise up to a consciousness of joy, a communion, a connection with the divine that is within. Like we rise up to move away from any negative thinking in our lives, we must rise up to this consciousness that we are being supported by the divine love and the law of cause and effect at all times, every day, every second. See, the great thing is we do not need to place limits on spirit, because spirit has no limits. Once we have the consciousness of what it is we have decided we require in our lives, and we align ourselves to that great power that created all, to the divine that is revealed in us at all times, we then avail ourselves to the infinite possibilities. We then give ourselves the permission, which is already actually granted by the universe, by our birthright, to put our hands in the biggest cookie jar there is and pull out all the goodies we can grab. And that includes peace and prosperity and peace of mind and inspiration in our lives, not just stuff, not just things, not even just vitality in our bodies, but everything. We increase the size of our bucket that's inside our minds by knowing that God's bucket is the one we get to fill ours from. With limitless prosperity available and ready to be served, our mental equivalent is the mirror to our external circumstances, okay? That's what we teach. That's what we know. That's what we know maybe intellectually, but is that what we embody? Is that what we are mindful and conscious of? Our inner life, our consciousness is truth-based, but the experience we imagine, the experiences we have been mindful of and focusing on, they are earthbound. They are coming. They are coming as we become conscious of it. I'm working on that stuff all the time. I am working all month to declutter. I came up with this theme months ago, but it's so interesting how, as we stepped into this month of declutter I have been decluttering, and some of it is not always fun to declutter, but it was necessary. It's necessary. We're decluttering our minds, we're freeing our hearts, and we're connecting with divine wisdom from our guts, from our intuition. And now is the time to allow it to flow, to get into the flow of joy. And joy is in our communion with spirit, in our communion with the power and the presence of the Big Bang, if you'd like to call it that, of our communion with this power, with this energy, connecting with the frequency of it. That's all it is. It's just energy that we are picking up on, that we are connecting ourselves to, that we are turning on. Imagine, speaking of spring and gardens, imagine a garden hose that is attached to a water spigot, a faucet. The spigot is source. The water's turned on and it's flowing. It's automatically coming out of the faucet, out of the spigot, into the garden hose. Now, how much comes out at the other end of that garden hose depends on whether or not the hose is obstructed, right? You think of your hose in the back of your house or the back of your apartment building. If the hose is constricted, then the water doesn't come out, or it comes out just a little bit. Because the water is flowing fully through the spigot, through the faucet, and yet at the other end of the hose, the water may be dribbling out. But our spiritual work is what removes the obstructions in our garden hose, because it's coming in. That water, that energy, that divineness, that intuition, that power, that those ideas, that vitality, that abundance, that opulence, it's just coming in. It's there, coming in. But whether it comes out into our lives is how we are obstructing it, how I obstruct it. God is the water. The divine is that water. The source and substance of everything is that water that's coming out of that spigot, coming out of the universe. The degree in which we experience that flow, the givingness of spirit in our lives, is determined by the degree which we able that water to flow through unobstructed. And, don't freak out about that idea. Don't freak out about the responsibility of it, because it's a gift, actually. And when you see that it's not showing up like you imagine it, like you intend it to be, then there's work to do, that's all. There's some mental and heartfelt work to do, some spiritual practice to do. Because that's our work. That's our word is our work in unkinking the hose so that spirit can flow through fully. We don't need to do anything about the flow of the water. The spigot's on full. That's all set up. That's all there. Our job is just to allow that water to flow through us. So let's not be deterred or confused about the appearances of what we see, what's in our life right this second that we may not like so much, that we don't want in our lives so much. Let's just face the fear. Let's just face the disappointment. Let's just face the bag of cookies that we pull out of the cupboard when we feel this way, or the next cigarette or the drink. Face it. Name the condition, then know the truth of it. It's old news. It's an old story. It's yesterday's thoughts, opinion, perspective, perception. The energy. The fact is that the energy you invest in knowing, using, and being the truth, and that's through what you focus on, your spiritual practice, other tools that we've talked about that you use. The spiritual practice you invest in speaking and knowing and doing and embodying and thus illuminating truth and the focusing of your mind and heart to the frequency of that truth. The more we do that every day, several times a day, if you like, meditation, spiritual mind treatment, the affirmative incantations, other mindfulness tools, the more yesterday's thoughts and beliefs become neutered, null, and void. It just works that way. It just works that way. Even, it's not necessarily going to every time be an aha moment. It could be just a little bit, a little more energy, a little more vitality, a little more, maybe life's not so bad. And then that grows, and that grows, and that grows. And not only does it grow in your life, it affects all of life. There's a gentleman named David R. Hawkins, and he wrote a book called Power versus Force. And he wrote, in this interconnected universe, every improvement we make in our private world improves the world at large for everyone. Simple kindness to oneself and all that lives is the most powerful transformational force of all. Now, Hawkins was a nationally renowned psychiatrist, physician, researcher, and spiritual teacher. He calibrated human consciousness from its lowest vibration, which he calls shame, to the highest, which, of course, is enlightenment. And that higher consciousness radiates a beneficial and healing effect, not only on the person exuding that consciousness, exuding that energy, that frequency, but the whole world. And he used kinesthetic testing. Some of you may know that as muscle resistance testing, where they say a word or a phrase and your ability to resist pressure on certain parts of your arm, etc., of the muscles being pressed upon is the power in which that word or phrase is energizing in your body, in your heart, in your mind, etc. But as he put this chart together to explain all that in detail, what the mystics have always known, he found out that love is more powerful than hatred, that truth does set us free. And again, it can be in even the tiniest increments. You build upon that every day. And then you will have your aha moments. You will have your miracles will show up. Increase your integrity, understanding, and capacity for compassion. You will change the world, not only yourself. Here's a quote from Michael Beckwith from his book, Spiritual Liberation. He wrote, "In God awareness, problems dissolve because there are no real problems in the mind of God. There's no real problems there. There are only perfect patterns of existence and divine ideas." That's what we're showing up. That's what's showing up in our lives. The perfect expressions of divine ideas. So we want a different look of that perfect expression of divine ideas, then we have to do the work. I have to do the work. We all have to do the work. We've been cleaning up all month. We've been using tools to declutter our minds and our hearts and our guts all month, all year, in fact. So now what? That's the question today. Now what? Ask yourself this. Are there any areas in my life where I am playing small or working patterns of lack, limitation, et cetera, et cetera? And what limiting beliefs can I let go to expand my consciousness and fill that bigger bucket that's right there waiting for us? Doesn't matter what we believe at this particular moment, what our bucket looks like and how much it can be filled, because over here is the biggest bucket, which is the divine bucket. And we can just as easily turn and use that to fill. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which of itself is without limit. It is ready to fill everything because it is infinite. It is entirely a question of our own receptivity." Receptivity. When appearances suggest an absence of the divine, start decluttering. Start using those tools. Face these appearances with the courage and power that is innate in you. Oh, sometimes, and I've been there, sometimes I don't believe I have that courage or that power, but I do. I just have to remind myself I do. We all have to remind ourselves sometimes. And then when these appearances show up that seem to be absent of the divine, we can neutralize them with conviction and purpose and spiritual practice, therapy, counseling, coaching. We can take action that we learned or forgot about maybe and relearn to lessen or remove these appearances' grip on our beliefs and thus our lives. Now, I'm not asking you to ignore or gloss over any genuine issues in your life or the world at large or what's going on in your community. I'm not asking you to hide behind platitudes until the storms pass, because I know that in times of social unrest, in times of personal tragedy of any level, when we apply the principles of this teaching and all the other philosophical and psychological tools that we talk about here, we find what is ours to do. It is there. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we didn't even know. But being mindful, being focused on what it is we want versus what is there at that moment. Not what we don't want, what we do want. Then we do invoke that holy, holy uprising. So that's what I'm doing today. We cleaned up, now what? I'm invoking a holy, holy uprising. I am using the principles of oneness, love, joy, and truth, and allow any uncomfortable topics, situations, and stories to help me deepen my spiritual practices, grow my compassion, and take divinely inspired action to transcend, transform, and inspire my best life. Join me. Do that for yourself. Deepen your spiritual practice. Grow your compassion, not only for what's going on outside, but what's going on inside. And then you can take divinely inspired action and transcend whatever it is in your life that you don't want there anymore. So cleaned up, now what? Well, now that we've cleaned up, now that we've decluttered, now let us live an absolutely fabulous, opulent, and love-filled life. Thank you so much. Namaste.